Hi, and welcome back to another episode of The Voice of Generation Climate, TVOGC. Today we have with us someone really like a true champion for climate through the lens of the enterprise world. We have Radhica Kanniganti, who is an ESG leader at Wipro, Nifty 50 company. Radhika, so great to have you here with us.
Thanks for having me.
Radhika, let's start with your journey into the world of climate and sustainability. Like, can you actually tell us the origin story and then what's brought you to this role? Being an ESG leader at Wipro. Tell us about the pathway in between.
Sure. So my journey actually started almost nearly 20 years ago. My bachelor's degree was in environmental engineering, which in those days was quite unheard of. But over the years, I have worked with primarily on the environment side, working with NGOs, startups, government. I was with the US EPA, working on their air pollution program, and worked with Terry Arghyam and a bunch of other organizations on water conservation, integrated water management, both rural, urban. So I guess over the years, it was, just interesting to work on the ground problems, and primarily in the environment side. I joined Wipro about almost 2 years ago, and this is more of a sustainability role where we're looking at both ES and G, all three ES and G pillars of sustainability, and looking into how can our corporate actually ingrain sustainability in their strategy. This is a little bit of a different role than I played earlier, but it kind of sort of combines into this because and I can see the change in sustainability over the years. I think what started off as just environment and with not many companies really bought into the space. Today it is every corporate, every organization is looking at sustainability at a very, very different and very deep lens, which is actually really heartening, and it's really good to be in this role at this point.
That's great. That's great. Yeah, you've really been a champion for the space through wearing multiple hats along the way, and now to be an ESG leader at Wipro. I think Wipro has been an early champion for sustainability as well in the Indian corporate environment, right? It's always kind of been like Wipro and then one other IT company that wears that hat, and a lot of other companies have kind of followed suit with how you've led direction for setting net zero goals for carbon, and then even what you do with waste and what you do with your water efficiency. So can you actually run us through some of your sustainability initiatives and just that evolution of ESG at Wipro over the years as well, and where are we at now with it?
Yeah, so Wipro's sustainability journey began more than two decades ago. So that when the leadership was kind of discussing on what is the role of business really in communities, in societies. What responsibility do we have towards our communities, and of course. I think it's well known that in 2001, Mr. Azim Premji committed about 66% of his personal wealth into the Azim Premji Foundation. Now, of course, Wipro wanted to look at something beyond philanthropy. While philanthropy is good, Wipro's first GRI report, sustainability report, came out in 2007 at a time when a lot of corporates weren't even thinking about it. The report was basically a narrative of the activities that Wipro is taking within its own business operations, right? 2019 is when we applied for the SBTi net zero goals, and we were one of the first 7 companies in the world
which is the science-based targets initiative.
That's right, the science-based targets initiative, which is an organization which actually reviews net zero goals to see look at science-based initiatives to reduce it, right? So Wipro is one of the first 7 companies in across the world to actually have approved net zero targets. And our net zero targets are pretty aggressive. We have a target to achieve net zero for scope 1, 2, and 3 by 2040. We have, of course, interim targets of 2030, which we have actually exceeded today. So today we have almost a 90% reduction of scope 1 and 2. Just to elaborate, scope 1 is emissions within the organization, scope 2 is purchased electricity, and scope 3 is everything outside of the organization, like business travel, employee commute, etc. So we are actually, on our way to achieving our targets well within our time. And it's not just carbon, of course, we are also looking at other initiatives as water and waste. So we have 7 ESG goals, which we got through a very intensive materiality exercise. And we have two goals on environment, we have 4 goals in social, and 1 goal in governance. And our environment goals are climate and water. So we hope to use about 60% of our freshwater use, of our water usage should come from recycled water. That's our goal by 2030. And of course, we've got 3 social goals, and one of them, out of 4 social goals, one of them is outward facing. So we have a very strong foundation, and we have, we work with on education, healthcare, and urban ecology as our primary 3 focus areas, and of course our governance goal on ethical business. So that's where we are. And so good thing is the governance around the ESG progress is very strong. So progress against each of these goals is reported to the board on a quarterly basis. Sustainability is very much ingrained in Wipro's ethos. So
Yeah, we in fact have that line, sustainability in your DNA.
Absolutely.
To really to have a shot at solving climate change and even just fixing our environment, we truly need to embed sustainability into our DNA as individuals and within enterprises and within the larger government framework as well.
Yes.
That's the only way we have a shot at making climate a default choice. So I think Wipro's definitely championed that from 20 years ago, and it's very evidently visible in your entire value chain. Could you perhaps talk about a specific project or a case study that comes to mind of any climate effort that you did, you embedded into your company, that over years has actually just borne fruit and you can see clear results from it now? Because maybe it'll inspire someone listening to this as well to think about how long-term these projects can be and how to actually get started with something they're considering in their own value chain.
I mean, there are at least 2-3 that I can think of. But I'll start with something that started off very early in our journey, right? I mean, it's our transition to renewable energy, right? Actually, I mean, for our scope 2 emissions, for example, we have 2 ways to go about it, right? Decarbonization, of course, within our operations, and transition to renewable energy. Now, we have a very strong energy efficiency story. We have IoTs and sensors across all our systems where we are monitoring the energy usage of all our campuses. So we have something called the Energy Command Center, the Global Energy Command Center. 16 million square foot of our campuses are actually connected to the Energy Command Center, where we can monitor the energy consumption of each of our campuses. And the good thing about this is, while all our new buildings are LEED Platinum certified, IGBC certified, and things like that, I can talk in length about some of the energy efficiency components that we've included in that. But the good part of having an energy command center, right, where we can monitor it centrally, is that we can figure out which parts of our old buildings have high energy consumption, and that then prompts us to go and do some retrofits and some conservation activities around that. So our energy consumption on the one hand has gone down, And then our transition to renewables is actually, improving year on year. So again, that is something that has started off very early in the game. So today we are at about 82% renewable energy across our campuses, and we have committed to 100% RE by 2030, which we will reach well ahead in time. So those are some of the case studies, initiatives that I can talk about. There are others which is related to business travel. There's related to our engagement with supply chain. So these are initiatives that it's more recent. Maybe we'll start looking at the results a few years from now.
That's really, really cool. The example of the energy command center is actually really awesome. I'm going to look into it in more detail as well. But having a cockpit view of all your energy consumption and knowing exactly where the leakage is happening and where to attack it and cut it, I think is a really just cool idea. Simple enough to, I can imagine like how much efficiency it's brought into your overall operations.
Yeah,
right?
For sure.
That sounds really cool. One of the misnomers that comes with efforts like these is they're almost always like upfront very expensive. And I think that scares off a lot of people too. Like sustainability must be more expensive, and that's just a norm. So how do you make peace with that? And how do you actually get decision makers within an organization like Wipro to still take the plunge and do the right thing for people, planet, profit, purpose, everything combined, right?
Yeah.
Triple bottom line. Even though the impact may be time delayed, right? In the over a life cycle, you'll actually see enough cost benefit. But short term, it may actually be more expensive. So how do you make peace with that?
I think it is how you view it, right? And like I said, and you very aptly put it, sustainability is within the DNA at Wipro, right? So it is something that sort of defines our purpose. For example, 66% of Wipro is owned by the Azim Premji Foundation, and therefore every dollar of profit, 66 cents is going into back into the community, right? So I think that way it's really built in to DNA of our organization. And when you talk about kind of sell this concept, I think that doesn't come in because it's part of what they do. But you're right you're partly right in that today. I think we are paying less for renewable energy than we are paying for coal-based. So I think, so over time, it's sort of, it is a myth that sustainability actually costs you money because I think over time it really just evens out. Whether you're talking about water, you're talking about electricity, I think you may have to put a little bit of capex investment, but I think it just evens out over time. And we do still plan out our investments in sustainability initiatives, and we sort of but I think there is the concept that it's too expensive, we will not do it. That doesn't come in. It's all okay, let's just plan it out better, and if it needs to be done, it needs to be done. So I think that thankfully that DNA is already there. So we really don't have to work too hard on that.
Yeah, I think it's just that short-term thinking needs to be shelved, and medium-term, long-term thinking automatically makes more sense, right?
Yeah.
It's not just the right thing to do; it's also the better option economically for the bottom line.
It is, yeah. And it defines your purpose. And I think when you put purpose at the heart of it all just falls into place.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, I'm sure you do a lot of planning, like forward 1 year planning, 2, 3, 5 year planning. And in that, you've bucketed by carbon, waste, water, energy, and other spheres of climate and sustainability, specifically for the E aspect in ESG. Do you have a hard time finding solution providers when you're actually looking for them? Can you give us a lens into what that looks like? You find a particular requirement in your own company, and then you look for who can solve it. What is that journey like?
Yeah, it's interesting you bring it up because there's so much to do in the E aspect, right? Whether you're talking about metering, whether you're metering your looking at your water meters, looking at just your energy consumption, air pollution, whatever it is, right? And there's so many small little things, that initiatives that need to take place in order to have a well-functioning system. And I think, to find service providers for this has, in the recent times, been easier. I think it wasn't so some time back, right? There were, probably not as many service providers at that time, but I think in recent times there are several players in this, and I think it's become easier to find a service provider to meet your needs, because I think now there are service providers for every little niche thing that we need, right? So I think finding the service provider is not so much of an issue. Having said that, I think to integrate those services within the organization, and to look at the scalability, and I think those are some of those aspects that we kind of spend time on, because Wipro has almost 21 campuses across the country. So any service provider that we on board needs to be able to take on 21 campuses, right? So how do we maybe start with a pilot and then scale? I think those are those issues that we sort of spend more time on, rather than actually finding a service provider. I think there are many service providers on that front.
Yeah, there's been a Cambrian explosion of the number of companies actually offering great solutions,
yes,
across the entire E spectrum, right? E or
Yeah.
climate spectrum.
Absolutely.
And yeah, sifting through them is obviously one challenge. Finding the good quality ones is a challenge, but they're there. And I think it's grown exponentially every single year now.
Yes.
Which is great news for our entire ecosystem, right? I think for enterprises looking for solutions for their own value chains, it's the best time ever. I guess it would have been way harder 5 years ago, and definitely really hard 10 years ago.
Absolutely. No, I absolutely agree. I think, and I know I always say this, right? The intervention of tech and sustainability has
Yeah.
been one of the biggest game changers in sustainability. I think
Yeah.
just the number of solutions that have come out by using technology to solve some of these sustainability or environmental problems, is mind blowing actually. And just the last, like you said, 3-4 years has been incredible in the number of solutions that have come out.
Yes, absolutely. And even we are at that intersection of tech and sustainability at Climes, right? And one of the niches that you get served is also through us. Very, very specific niche.
Yeah.
And that's actually really cool. I think earlier you would expect one company to come and solve a lot. And now you can actually have one company come and just do part A, and another company do part B, but do it really, really, really well.
Yeah.
Right? What kind of value have you found in that? If you can just throw a little bit of color in the niche, for example, like we're serving, you have a carbon mandate, and in it, you measure all your emissions, scope 1, 2, 3, and you're kind of getting it done in a very sectoral way, right? So can you just talk about your carbon mandate, how you're measuring it, what is your plan with that as well?
Yeah. So of course, scope 3, we report across 6-7 categories, right? That are applicable for Wipro, and each of them is almost a vertical by itself, right? So we have upstream fuel, we have business travel, we have employee commute, purchased goods and services. So each of these is a separate category by itself. So what we're working with you is on business travel, right? And what I think we have been doing in the past, of course, we've been measuring our travel emissions, emissions from business travel. But I think year on year, we are trying to at least improve on the methodology. Today, scope 3 is a bit all over the place because there is no set methodology, there is no set mandate on how to achieve reductions and things like that. So what we have been doing over the past 7-8 years is while we are reporting on business travel emissions, we've just been improving on our methodology, improving on our internal data collection and things like that. So I think so that's some of the things that I think we had that discussion as well on how can we make it as granular as we can, how can we get these numbers as accurate as we can. And the reason we want to do that is if we get granular information, we can also achieve reductions, right? Eventually we want to achieve reduction. So if we know, for example, which category of employees has the highest carbon emissions from business travel, perhaps we can target on that category of employees, maybe target some policies for travel reduction perhaps. So I think those kind of policies can evolve only when we have granular data. And so it's good to work with solution providers who can give us that kind of granular data.
Yeah, I think the keywords are granular data. You're going very, very specific. And only once you've measured can you know what to act on, right? And you have a very clear mandate to cut emissions and reduce as much as possible, which I think you are really ahead of the curve on doing. All right, Radhika, so we also saw that, and not just saw, like I think we've been fans of the fact that Wipro has really key governing principles of sustainability. And two of them that we want to call out are transparency as a catalyst for self-transformation, and sustainability is everyone's job. Please throw some light on either of the two or both.
Yeah.
I love that second one, by the way. Like, sustainability is everyone's job. It's not one chief sustainability officer. It's everybody across the company who actually embraces it. Right? Again, back into the DNA. So please throw some light. Like, where does that come from? How does it play out?
Yeah. So maybe since you started with the second one, I'll take from there. So we have something called the 5 habits. Right? And every employee needs to is sort of given that training periodically, and and wherever across our campuses we have these 5 habits kind of put up. And while sustainability is not a separate habit that's called out, but it's ingrained into it, right? And from the time a person is onboarded in the organization, there is this talk on sustainability, right? It is in the culture. For example, all of our campuses are plastic free, mostly paper free as well. We don't use tissue paper and things like that. So it's in the culture. So it's sort of permeates across the organization, and employees are even talking about it. I think it's not that people are actively maybe measuring their own carbon footprint, or they may not be measuring their water footprint or whatever, but the principles of sustainability of just looking at our campuses and things like that, it's ingrained into the employees. You can see that when they talk to clients, right, and a lot of our client facing roles, sustainability forms a big part of the kind of the presentations that they make to clients. So that way, yes, it is, as I said, part of the culture, and it's it permeates through the organization. The first part of it, transparency, that is something that we believe very strongly on. We are very transparent of the numbers that we put out across all our parameters. If there is something that we are measuring, we have no issues in putting it out in the public. So I think transparency sort of is the foundation on which we think. So we of course report on several disclosure frameworks, and we are extremely transparent about all our numbers. If you look at our sustainability report, our annual report, our ESG dashboard, we have all our numbers out there. So I think that we truly believe that we have to be able to do things that we can talk about, and whatever we talk about is what we actually are doing in house.
Yeah, lead by example and actually act, like walk the talk within your own operations, right? So in leading by example, as an ESG leader, what would you advise other ESG leaders and other companies to do? Like, what are some best practices that new companies, companies just getting listed, they have now been given a mandate, they have to have an ESG practice, really like mature into a healthy practice, the kind that Wipro has. What would you advise them to do?
I think You can start slow, but start sure. I mean, start, with a very, very clear plan in place, right? I mean, so of course, data is key. So I think, as you rightly said, if what you don't measure, you can't act on. So you have to measure. So, and I think that's where sort of this ESG sort of framework comes into place. It is a good starting point. It gives you what parameters are important to measure, what and how do you measure. I think companies just starting into this field should really start with measurements. So, like for example, we are working with our suppliers, and that's the first thing that we are starting with. Help them measure what data do they have, what data they don't have, how they can measure that. So once you start measuring, you have a good baseline to start off with in terms of setting targets and kind of aiming for the stars. So I would say start slow, but start with the sure plan on measurements.
That's very, very specific. I like that. Measure, like get knowledgeable or get aware of what your footprint is. Your across waste, water, carbon, energy, right? You have to measure. And I think that's actually less intimidating as well. When we go with the plan of we got to do everything all at once,
Yeah.
it's very, very intimidating and expensive and very hard to begin with it. But just starting off with like that knowledge measurement layer, I think is great advice.
Yeah, it is.
Very,
It's
very good
hard to.
advice.
I mean, and which is why I think. I mean, people ask, what is ESG, and it's sometimes kind of overwhelming at times. But it's actually nothing but a framework, really. It's
Yeah.
just a framework for you say, okay, you have to make your business sustainable, but how do you even start? I mean, so ESG is really the framework of where you start, and I think looking at each of those parameters, measuring them, and going from there, I think is really the key. You know.
Absolutely. And just coming over to my last question now to you. What is your hope for the future? Like, we at Climes at least believe that enterprises are a really key lever to solving climate change. Because enterprises are the ones that really build society and build the products and services we need to consume to, improve our standards of living. And that means enterprises also play a really key role in the fight against climate change, right? What is your hope? Like, what role do enterprises have to play going forward in becoming more purpose-driven businesses? And beyond that, what is your hope to solve climate change independently as Radhika?
These are heavy questions. um, yeah, I mean, enterprises do have a role. Maybe I will even agree a major role, but they're not the only they're not the only entity that plays a role. Of course, I think as enterprises, we have a responsibility to the communities that we operate within, to the society, to the planet, of course, right? I mean, so which is why I just going back to the example of Wipro is that we have a stakeholder values, right? So how do we provide value to every stakeholder versus every shareholder? So I think and that's the kind of approach I feel enterprises should take. What kind of value can they provide to their stakeholders? And stakeholders including customers, shareholders, suppliers, planet, communities, everything, right? So yes, in that sense, I think enterprises do need to play a big role. Having said that, I think the responsibility lies with every individual. I think just to understand that by our very existence that we have a footprint, and going from there, I think every individual has a responsibility to reduce their footprint. And what hope do I see? From the time I started, almost 20 years ago, till today, I see a lot of change. And where, that any talk of sustainability was only on environment, it's moved to, all aspects, right, today. And then, we used to struggle to get companies to, understand the importance of, water management and, things like that. And even 10 years ago, it was difficult. Even then, though there was a water scarcity, we still had a hard time convincing companies and communities, right? But today, I mean, people understand it. Companies are doing things around it. So there is change, and which is great. Is it as fast as as it needs to be? Perhaps not. But what's the hope going forward? The hope is I see a lot more awareness. I see younger generations being a lot more committed, a lot more aware, and I think that's the change. That's the change that we're going to be seeing when us as individuals start demanding certain, say, sustainable products, sustainable way of life. I think the industry will respond, and governments will respond. So I think, and I see that happening increasingly, especially in metros. We still have a long way to go in tier 2 cities, but it'll come. I think there's hope, and I see that hopefully in the next 5-10 years, the world should be a better place.
Wow, what a great parting thought. Hope is absolutely essential. I think we have to have hope to rebuild our planet better. Yeah, and I don't think we can give up on our climate goals at all. I think we have to hope for a better future and actually build it, right? Turn that hope into action. So I think I really like that thought that if we demand better, we will get served better as well.
Yeah.
And individuals really are like that root agent to demand better from the enterprises we buy from, the governments, that serve us. And we should really use that voice to just be aware of what all climate solutions are there and to demand better from society.
Yeah, I totally believe so.
Right. Great parting thoughts. Radhika, it's been so lovely having you on our podcast, TVOGC. Really appreciate you doing this. And
Thank you for having
please
me.
keep championing. What you do at Wipro is amazing. I think you're like a shining example for a lot of other enterprises to emulate. And if they don't know how to get started, I think they should come and talk to you. Because I think that ripple effect will be extremely strong. Right? One more organization converted with a real ESG mandate is yet one more spear in the fight against climate change.
Absolutely, yeah, one at a time.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you, Radhika.
Great, thank you.